Hello geometry students, and welcome to a video that is part 2 of a lesson on distance and midpoint formulas. Okay, so we just did a midpoint problem where we're given the midpoint and we're looking for an endpoint. Now the problem with the first method that I showed you is that it's very abstract. You don't have any visual to go with it, and that's the way that most books teach it, and that's the way it's usually taught. Okay, but I'm going to show you a visual way. What I'd like you to do is, if you understood the first method, pause the video, try to do number 8, and see what you get. Okay, pause the video now. Okay, now notice there's no answer there, but you have an answer written down if you understood that method. Now here is a visual way of doing this. Now in this problem, just like in the last one, and this method will help you with this type of problem, you're given the midpoint already. So when you're given the midpoint, you know that this -1 is the x value of the midpoint, and this 3 is the y value of the midpoint. So what you're going to do visually is you're going to make a little x number line and a little y number line, and you're going to put the midpoint somewhere near the middle of those number lines. Okay, so you're going to put the -1 here for the x, because that's the middle of the x's, and you're going to put the 3. I don't know why I wrote 3. I guess I was thinking ahead. So you're going to put the -1 here and the 3 here. All right, now we're looking at an endpoint here. This is going to be our x, y. This is one of the endpoints, right? So just to read it, find the coordinate of r, which is one of the endpoints of PR. And P is the other endpoint. That's why it's named PR. Segments are always named by their endpoints. Okay, so we know that 6 is an endpoint. So I'm going to put 6. Actually, 5 is the x endpoint. So on the x1, on the x1, I'm going to put the 5 to the right, since 5 is more than 1. So I'm going to put the 5 over here. And I'm going to notice that the distance between -1 and 5, with a little bit of thought, I realize that distance is a distance of 6. So that means, since this is the middle, I've got to find the other side of that -1. That's also going to be a distance of 6 away. So I say, okay, from -1, if I go 6 units to the left, I'm going to end up at -7. So there is my x coordinate of the endpoint P. Oh, sorry, the endpoint R. Okay, so let's try the y side. Now, the y coordinate is 6. Now notice the 6 is still on the right here. Just to let you know, it can be on the left. You know, it could work the other way around. So you could end up with a point over here somewhere, and you have to find the one on the other side of the 3. Hopefully that makes sense. But this time it's on the right, and this is a distance of 3. So this will also be a distance of 3. And if I go from 3 and I want to go a distance of 3, I'm going to end up at 0. I should have written that in red so that we can kind of emphasize that that's the other endpoint that we're looking for. Okay, so there's our midpoint. I mean, there's our other endpoint. It's at -7, 0. Just a visual alternative. I'm going to pause my video and just show you what it would look like if we did it the other way, just for those of you that worked it out that way. This is the answer, though. Okay, so there's your algebraic process if you like to do it that way. Okay, so usually my classes are pretty split. You know, some students like to do it using the algebraic method that I have here in red, and some people like to put the number lines. Okay, so let's look at one more type of problem here, and this is in synthetic geometry. So let's just put a note here. This is synthetic, and just so we can get used to this, that means that it's not in the coordinate plane. Just floating there, okay? Just no coordinates, no ordered pairs, just a location. So we have P is the midpoint of segment XY. So let's draw that. So here's a segment. That segment is XY. P is right in the middle so that these two are equal. So I like to always show when I'm drawing something that's equal, I like to show that they're equal. And that's what this midpoint says. It says right in the middle. So those two pieces, those two halves are exactly half. Now I'm going to label what's given to me onto the diagram. We're going to be doing a lot of this as we move forward with segments and with angles. Labeling diagrams, very important. For these problems, it might seem very easy, but if you get in the habit, it's going to help you in the long run. So xp, the length of xp, is 8x minus 2. And py, which is this one, the length of py, is 12x minus 30. We're looking for the value of x. Now, since these are equal, we're going to set these two expressions equal to each other. 8x minus 2 equals 12x minus 30. Use your algebra skills and solve that. We subtract 8x from both sides and add 30 to both sides. That's one way of doing it anyway. So on the left side, I have 28. On the right side, I have 4x, right? 12x minus 8x is 4x. And then divide both sides by 4. And we have x equals 28 divided by 4, which is 7. Okay, let's see how you guys do for the next one. Now, I would like, in your homework, I do want to see all of this work. I want to see the diagram drawn. Whether or not you find these too easy, you're just going to have to trust me on that, okay? So I'm going to pause the video, you pause the video, and you work it out. Okay, so if you got x equals 3, you did beautifully, except this problem doesn't ask us to find x. This problem asks us to find the length of segment FH. So the length of segment FH requires us to plug in that value, the 3 that we found, to find FG. Now these are, I forgot to mark these congruent, they are the same. So we can plug it into FG, and let's see what happens. So we have 14 times 3, x is 3, okay, plus 25, and that is 67. Okay, so that means this one is also 67, and so FH is 67 plus 67, which is 134. And that answers the question. That's your final answer. Okay, now in this one we're going to use the diagram, knowing that now we're just going to learn a different word here, or use a different word. We learned this word in the dictionary. The word bisects. Now when you bisect something, when something is bisected, it means it's cut right at the middle, right at the midpoint. So that means if this line N bisects the segment QP, or sorry, QR, so that means that these two are equal. And so we're going to do the same exact thing, set these equal, and we're going to eventually find QP. So why don't you see if you can work that out. Don't stop when you find X. Keep going until you know what QP is. Okay, I'm going to pause the video. I want you to pause it. Okay, there it is. So you should have gotten QP is 41 as a sort of a checkpoint to make sure you're at least on the right track. You should have gotten that X is 12, but that's not the final answer. That's just on the way. Notice that in number 10, we had to find the entire length of the segment FH, so we had to double our answer because we were looking for all the way from F all the way to H. But in number 11, we're only asked to find QP. So you really have to look at the directions carefully. We're only looking for this part right here. We don't have to double it because we're not looking for QR. Okay? I hope you found this video helpful.